Domestic violence is a profound social problem that greatly affects the physical and mental health of its victims. From a psychological perspective, we can analyze the likelihood of domestic violence through a series of signs. In this paper, we will analyze these signs from a psychological perspective with a view to raising awareness of the problem of domestic violence and helping more people to identify and cope with the potential risks. Emotional loss of control and propensity for violence. Domestic violence is often closely related to emotional outbursts. Whether a person is prone to outbursts of anger and irritability over trivial matters and becomes aggressive towards family members is one of the key factors in determining potential domestic violence. In psychology, difficulties in managing emotions often indicate that an individual has problems with emotional regulation, which in turn may lead to intense conflict. 2. Desire for control and dominance. Domestic violence is often accompanied by one party's attempt to maintain the balance of power by controlling and dominating the other party. The potential risk of domestic violence can be detected through a psychological lens by observing whether an individual displays an excessive desire for dominance, an extreme hold over family members. Such behavior may indicate that his/her individual need for power and control is too strong, leading to an imbalance in family relationships. 3. Signs of silence and concealment. Domestic violence is often accompanied by silence and concealment. Victims may choose to remain silent for fear of reprisals or other reasons. However, psychologically we can observe signs such as changes in behavior and social isolation which may suggest that a person is experiencing domestic violence. Concealment about intimate relationships often carries with it negative effects on mental health, including emotional problems such as anxiety and depression. 4. Feelings of inferiority and self-depreciation. Psychological studies have found that domestic violence often causes victims to develop feelings of low self-esteem and self-depreciation. Therefore, when we observe whether a person frequently shows denial and contempt for himself or herself, or even deliberately harms himself or herself in intimate relationships, we may need to be alert to the potential problem of domestic violence. Impact on external relationships. From a psychological perspective, domestic violence can also have a profound impact on an individual's social relationships. An individual who has experienced domestic violence may exhibit psychological problems such as avoidance of social activities and distrust of the outside world. Observing whether their relationships with friends and family members become distant and their attitudes towards external interactions may help to recognize signs of domestic violence. 6. Manifestation of mental health problems. Domestic violence is often closely linked to mental health issues from a psychological perspective. An individual may develop mental health problems such as anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc. as a result of prolonged exposure to violence. Observing whether an individual exhibits these mental health problems can be an important clue in determining the problem of domestic violence. 7. Excessive hostility to authority. Individuals displaying excessive hostility towards a member of the family and excessive antipathy towards authority are also signs of a possible domestic violence problem from a psychological perspective. Such hostility may be the result of a long history of being treated unfairly, leading to strong negative feelings towards authority, which in turn may evolve into violent behavior. 8. Emotional deprivation and apathy. Emotional deprivation and apathy are common manifestations of domestic violence problems. At the psychological level, Observing whether an individual lacks emotional expression in intimate relationships and is indifferent to family members may be a sign of domestic violence problems. Such indifference may be a protective mechanism against past injuries, or it may lead to ongoing psychological trauma. 9. Variability to family values. Domestic violence problems often involve distortions and variations on family values. Psychologically, observing whether an individual shows emotions such as denial of family values and distrust of intimate relationships may be one of the clues to a domestic violence problem. Such variation may stem from past hurts and conflicts or may be a result of domestic violence problems. X. Negative coping mechanisms. Domestic violence problems may lead individuals to develop negative coping mechanisms, such as avoidance, indulgence in unhealthy lifestyles, and so on. Psychologically, observing whether an individual exhibits these negative coping mechanisms may help to identify potential domestic violence problems. These mechanisms may be unhealthy adaptations to chronic stress and conflict, or they may exacerbate an individual's psychological distress. The problem of domestic violence manifests itself in a series of psychological signs. By observing the manifestations of loss of emotional control, desire for control and dominance, silence and concealment, sense of inferiority and self-depreciation, impact on external relationships, manifestation of mental health problems, excessive hostility to authority, emotional deprivation and indifference, mutation of values towards the family, and negative coping mechanisms, it is possible to gain a more comprehensive understanding of whether a person is at potential risk of domestic violence. Comprehensive observation and analysis of these signs can help in early identification of problems, provision of support, and effective interventions to protect the physical and mental health of family members.